Well, we started cheerleading in junior high, and then we went through high school and college at the University of Texas. Being a cheerleader there was such an amazing journey. But really, that was supposed to be the end of the journey because at that time, cheerleading really wasn't a career path. It certainly wasn't on our radar. So you and I kind of went separate ways and lived different lives during that time. But in 2000, I was doing a little consulting here and there and training some coaches. And in 2000, England called, and I got the opportunity to go over there and help shape the beginning of the international development of competitive cheerleading and dance. And it was in different iterations, and we'll talk about that along the journey in the podcast, but different iterations over time. And you were involved to a certain degree in that as well. And then in 2013, Allie and I formed Legacy Cheer and Dance, which we just called Legacy. It's the best journey that I can imagine because it was our labor of love to give back to the sport that had given us so much, but also do it in a way that was bigger than cheerleading. It was really all about building leaders for life. And congratulations if you can do some cool flips and twisting things and do some pyramids and be a little Cirque du Soleil kind of stuff. But what I really want to know is what kind of person you're going to be when you come out of it. I want to know how that's going to change your life and how that will impact you. And so for us, that's been a wonderful journey of love that's been a joy to be a part of. But it hasn't, I know we just said we fill arenas, and we do, and that's amazing. But it hasn't been a simple or easy journey. Like I said, we definitely did it the hard way, living in Texas, doing this over the ocean. But we've learned a lot. I feel like we've been in situations where we didn't know how we were going to pay the bills next. That can happen in entrepreneurial world. We had a situation where the ceiling fell in, and in the middle of an event, we had a electrical fire with an arena full of people. Yeah. Things were happening. We had one time where we were in a situation where you and I were sitting across the table from some men who are in kind of the corporate side of the industry and saying, we said to them, this is what we need to happen. This is what we need to do to serve our community and serve our people. And they literally laughed at us and we're saying that's impossible. And we just kind of went, but it's important and it matters. And so watch us. And so that's what we did.
That is exactly what we did. When they said that's impossible and they laughed, that is exactly the fuel. That season of our life growing up where we just had nothing.
All 6 of us shared one box of tuna helper. We also didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. How are we going to do this without an expectation that we have to have hope?
We didn't have a Christmas tree. We definitely were not going to have gifts under a tree that didn't exist. And then one day we showed up, and the kindness of other people, I think a local church sent over literally an entire Christmas tree lit up and gifts for all the 6 kids. When Dad, our biological dad, he signed relinquishment in a court of law, and he made all 6 of us, we have 4 brothers, it was illegal to see him, talk to him, or whatever. He literally gave us away legally. There was such a lack of certainty that comes with poverty when you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, and you don't know if you will have a roof over your head, and you might be homeless at any given point. Yeah. Woo! Okay, holidays are here. Andrea, where are you? Where are you in all of this chaos?
I am like a lot of people, I think, where we're balancing the kind of finishing up of the year on work life. We're balancing professional, things, but we're also doing personal life and getting ready for travel and all the stuff. And then both you and I are in the middle of moves and all the house moves. So there's chaos in a lot of ways, but there's also excitement and things to look forward to. There's a big mix, I think.
And that's there's where gratitude. I think the things that make the holidays so special and hard for a lot of people is because we go through these different seasons in our life, Andrea, and sometimes holidays are just really magical, the way that you just dream of. But for a lot of us, and many times, and in many seasons of our lives, the holidays are like the opposite of the Instagrammable thing. And I know that was true for you and I think that gives you and I so much perspective about reflecting now on how it was to grow up in poverty, to not know where our next meal was going to come from at that time, to not even know if we were going to have a roof over our head. Like we were about to be homeless. So those are the holidays that I think about now, that we don't worry about our next meal, and we don't worry about the roof over our head. And we're quite blessed in so many of those ways to not have to worry about that anymore. That season of our life growing up where we just had nothing, but also there was magic there.
Well, there was, and I think that the magic came partly in the innocence of childhood, partly in the expectations of what holidays can and should be, and partly what can we self-created, because you and I are naturally optimistic and hopeful people, and we honed that in our lives even when there wasn't ease and there wasn't a smooth ride. But at the same time, I think it's also a skill that we've honed and developed as we got older and became more purposeful in shaping the lives that we wanted. When things weren't going the way we wanted them to go, we really took control of what that narrative looked like in our own minds so that it could shape the way the actions happened when we actually had autonomy to make those decisions as we were older.
Do you think, like, when you look back on our childhood and those all those years where we were so poor and living in such deep poverty, and do you look back on our childhood, especially in those holiday seasons, and think we made those moments as happy as we could because we had to? Or do you look at it from a different perspective of what, because we can now look back in a different lens?
No, I think it was a coping mechanism. At least it was for me. I mean, I want to hear from you what you thought, because we all experience things differently. But for me, it was a coping mechanism because, you know, when food scarcity is part of your life and you're looking for that safety, one element of safety is the self-generated hope and happiness that it comes more natural to some people than others. For me, it's part of my natural demeanor, but I also know that it can be developed, especially as we get older and have an understanding of the agency that we have and the stories and the narratives that we create in our lives. But for me, it was a coping mechanism to look for the silver lining and find the joy even when we were hungry. I mean, Thanksgiving, do you remember Thanksgiving? There are 6 kids in the house, and Thanksgiving, we all 6 of us shared one box of tuna helper. And if you don't know what tuna helper is, it's a box of food that you kind of, it's a processed food where it's got like pasta and meat in it, and you mix it with milk and butter, and that's the meal. And that was our Thanksgiving that year.
That was our feast.
We also didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. So there was never quite a level of how are we going to do this without an expectation that we have to have hope. We have to create that hope. So we got excited about a box of tuna helper for Thanksgiving.
I'm gonna have to,
or at least I did.
Yeah,
I did, because that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. And I can't say that was easy. It was on purpose.
For sure. I was not excited about a box of tuna helper divided amongst all 6 kids and mom.
Well, I say I was excited.
So.
I was excited on the first bite because I was hungry.
Well,
but probably if you would have asked me, do you want turkey and dressing in a traditional Thanksgiving meal, I would have been like, heck yes. And I would have compared real quick.
I think, I mean, that's one way that you and I are hardwired a little bit differently. We're both super optimistic people, but it is definitely more natural for you.
Mm-hmm.
I had to practice that a lot. I had to really work on that skill. And as an adult now, that I've honed it and championed that, I think, in most times in my life. But it's one of the things we teach at L3 actually, is how do you do that?
Yes.
But for me, the challenge of that circumstance in our life in those years, the actual mountain of being so poor felt like it was something that was not a movable mountain. And to have to rely, do you remember, not only that Thanksgiving, it might have been the same year, I can't remember, maybe the next year, for Christmas, we didn't have a Christmas tree. We definitely were not going to have gifts under a tree that didn't exist. And then one day we showed up, and the kindness of other people, I think a local church sent over literally an entire Christmas tree lit up and gifts for all the 6 kids. Looking back now, I think that's a big part of why the Legacy Way literally has being kind as a core ethos of what we do, not just professionally as we built Legacy, but in our own life.
How to make a decision. Okay, well, when are you going to break down and decide that you have to get this prosthesis done? Well, it's going to be when you get brave enough to do the surgery. And how are you going to get brave enough to do the surgery? You're going to know that when it will both feel better and look better than the current situation, that's when you need to pull the trigger and get the surgery. And I put it off for a long time. I had a surgery to try to save the eye, probably 2 years prior to making this decision. And it was this big ongoing process. And I thought, I want to do every single thing that I can to preserve the real eye. But at some point, it's going to feel better and look better to go through this very painful and scary process to get a prosthesis. And that was the criteria that I had on my plate to make these decisions. I went into this doctor's office scared out of my wits, but acted brave, because the doctor went and did the evaluation, and he looked, and I just went in and went, I need this thing out, get it out. Like, I need this eye gone, take it out. And they were very much, no, that's not how this is going to work. We're not going to just go take your eye out. We go through a process to make sure you're ready. And he was rightfully wanting to, this is a permanent decision, and we need to go through some steps and give you some time and make sure this is right. But I was able to, in that conversation, lay out where I've been, what the analysis had been, what my criteria was, where my boundaries were, and why I was at that decision. And he went, okay, you've done all the steps without, before you got here, you did all the steps we would have made you go through anyway. And so I made the appointment that day to get the surgery done. And they said, when do you want to do it? And I said, yesterday, as soon as you can, because I was so scared. I needed the scary part to go away so that I could be brave. Do you know what I mean? It was a weird dynamic because I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to have to wait for 3 weeks before. I just went, give me the first one, which they did, thankfully. Welcome. It's Lead Love Legacy podcast. How does that feel, Allie?
There's no better way to start a podcast than just to jump in. And we're going to be imperfect. We don't even know what we're doing yet, but we can't wait to hear from you guys, our viewers, our listeners.
Talk about not knowing what we're doing. I mean, this is amazing. I'm so glad that we have good people around us, because this is literally, so just so you guys know, we're starting podcast 1, which is called Lead Love Legacy, L3 for short. It stands for lead boldly, love deeply, and live your legacy. We were growing up and Mom had index cards. Do you remember this? Mom had the index cards that had all of the household tasks.
I am traumatized from the index cards. How can we not? How do we not remember the index cards?
Yeah, but they worked. There was a thing in a magazine that had this. So I think she took this. She didn't make the system up. I think she learned it. We'll ask her and we'll come back to you in another episode. But anyways, Mom had colored index cards, and they all had different labels on them. And every Saturday or whatever it was, each of the children would get a task. She'd hand out index cards, and we'd all get a task to, clean the bathroom, or do the laundry or fold the socks, or whatever the task was that had to get done. And speaking of accountability, the one card, you would think the card I didn't want is clean the bathroom, which was right up there. But the one card that I didn't want was the pink card, because the pink card said sweep the kitchen floor. And that okay, fine, sweep the kitchen floor. It's not that bad. It's not, clean the bathrooms are worse. but not for me because I'm legally blind. If you have not seen the podcast yet, I am legally blind. And my mom was giving me a pink index card and she told me that I had to clean visible dirt off the kitchen floor. And I didn't like that. I mean, come on, Mom. And so she created this environment, which is so important as a parent or as a team leader or as a coach or a teacher or any person who is leading others. She created an environment where it was safe to fail so that she had the authority to hold me accountable for learning the task, even if it took me a bunch of times to fail and learn to get up and do it again. That is a gift.
But Ev and Leroy, who are long time, when we say relationships are everything, Ev and Leroy definitely fall into this category. So if you're part of our legacy friends and family, you will know Ev and Leroy as our as our DJs. They're the ones who are playing the music when you click play. But
they bring the party, they bring the noise,
they bring the party,
they
bring the noise. Yes,
keep everybody happy. But also, they are our biggest cheerleaders as well. I mean, they were on board for. I mean, I met them even before you came in. I met them in the very beginning of my travels to the United Kingdom in 2000, summer of 2000. Yes. They were involved, and we maintained these friendships and the relationships in chapters when I was still working in the UK, and then chapters when I was back in America and didn't think I would get to go to the UK. Like all of these things were happening, and yet you and I showed up in 2013 to establish the business in person. Ev and Leroy were at the airport picking us up, being amazing, drove us to the venues and really created the life of step one for legacy.
Yes. So I want Ev to actually tell that story, or Leroy to tell that
story. You guys have to wait for the Ev and Leroy story.
That'll have to come in a different episode. We all walked into our first site visit, and this was Olympic Park, and nobody knew who we were. We were either completely nuts or completely naive, or maybe a little bit of both. But we decided it would be a good idea to go into Olympic Park and just say, hey, if we do this, they will come. And nobody knew who we were. So Andrea talked about what Ev said when you looked around Olympic Park in the middle of that, right before we signed the dotted line to say yes.
Well, there was a pivotal moment that none of us will forget. And we were literally standing in the middle of the arena floor, looking up at all of the empty seating on that. The arena was empty that day. And we were looking at all the empty seating. We were studying rigging in the ceiling and traffic flow and where the doorways are and how it would really work to run a large scale event there. Acoustics were all the stuff. And Ev looked at me and goes, man, imagine if we could sell this place out. And I just went, give us a couple of years. And that's exactly what happened. Now, not only did we do that in a couple of years, we've outgrown that venue. So now we're just at Wembley and we sold that out too.
Oh. What?
Okay. So not everyone can see your phone. We'll put it on the screen if you're listening and can't see the screen. This is a photo of 4 young cheerleaders sometime in the performance setting. And they're,
at first glance, Andrea, like you could have missed this, but at first glance, this photo could have just meant, they're having a blast. Great. But I know what you're talking about here. I totally know right what you're talking about here. This is so awesome.
So here's what it is. There's 2 of the 4 athletes are holding up the sign language sign for I love you. So if you make a fist and extend your pinky finger, pointer finger, and thumb, I love you, with pure joy on their face. I mean, this is a happy moment for them. They're both hands for all athletes in this picture. So two on the left, left and center, are doing the I love you sign. And then I don't know what the choreography was going on here. I don't know if this was a mistake or on purpose or what, but I'm going to just call this. The other two we're close to the I love you, but instead of doing the pointer finger and the pinky finger and the thumb out, they wrap their thumb around their finger. So the only fingers pointing are the pinky and the pointer finger. They're holding their hands up in what Allie and I and many other people know as the universal symbol for the University of Texas Longhorns, which is where we went to university. It's where the roots of all this started. And we could talk about that connection.
Those are our cheerleading days.
So that picture is pure joy. It's I love you. And it's Texas Longhorns. Thanks for joining us today on the Lead, Love, Legacy podcast.
Remember, lead boldly, love deeply, and live your legacy.
If this episode encouraged you, like and subscribe and share it with someone who needs it.
And join us next time as we continue to build leaders and legacies for life.